All right, guys, it is Wednesday, May 11th, 2022. Today marks day 5 of me working on the 55 hardtop. I got my chief mechanic here, Kiki. Say hi, Kiki. You don't have to smile at everybody. You're supposed to say something. Okay, so the video yesterday, I showed the clacking sound I had, which was coming from the fuel pump. Either the fuel pump, probably more than likely the fuel pump rod. There's slack in there causing the fuel pump rod to clack. Now, to be clear, this Howard's hydraulic roller cam I've got in this 400 is an iron camshaft. This is not a billet steel camshaft. If it was billet steel, you'd have to have it is my understanding, you're supposed to have a different fuel pump rod that maybe has a bronze tip on the end of it. I called Howard's and talked to the tech guy. This will use a factory fuel pump rod. So I changed the fuel pump rod out with another used one that I had, and it's still doing it. The tech at Howard's Cam seems to think it's the pump, like maybe the spring's too weak or something. So what I decided to do was get a new fuel pump and a fuel pump rod and change them both out. So what I ended up doing, the fuel pump that I have on here is from O'Reilly's. It's just a block mount mechanical fuel pump. Now there's a reason for that. Originally, when I started buying parts for this car several years back, I bought a Holley mechanical block mount fuel pump. But my idea was at one point to drive this car possibly to Bowling Green, Kentucky to the Tri-5 Nationals. I'm gonna have to drive it. I don't have a trailer. I don't even have a truck that would haul it. So I wanted to keep this car simple and inexpensive to repair, because you have to think about it from my point of view. If this car breaks down on me on the road, I'm going to have to be able to fix it to continue on. I'm not going to be able to afford a tow bill for 800 miles or whatever, however far it is to Bowling Green, Kentucky to get it back. So we're talking a $22 block mounted mechanical fuel pump that if that went out, I could go to any parts store in between here and there and I'd be able to find that fuel pump, which reality is if I go on a long trip in one of these old school small blocks, I carry a coil, a module, and a new fuel pump, just in case. Those are the three main culprits that will stall you on the side of the road on an old school carbureted small block Chevy. That's the top three things. Take it from me, from driving these cars since I was 16 years old. That's all I've had is carbureted small blocks. I know them, and that's all I've ever driven. So what I ended up doing was I borrowed my parents' car and I drove downtown a while ago, and I went ahead and went to Advance Auto. I have an account at O'Reilly's, a mechanic's account, so I decided to go ahead and go to Advance and buy their brand fuel pump. I did ask him who makes it, because there's going to be one big company that makes it, and he wasn't sure, but he did say that their filters are made by Baldwin. So this is definitely, I mean, they pretty much look the same, and it could be made by the same company. Now, as far as I know, the ones at O'Reilly's are made by Carter. The ones at Napa are made by Carter. So I am not 100% sure on this one. Really, I mean, the only difference I see on these is gold anodized on the bottom of that one, and this one's just cad plated silver. So, or not gold anodized, but gold cad. This is silver cad, but I mean, otherwise it looks like the exact same manufacturer. But all right, so I got the fuel pump off of my 55. Got that clicking sound, clacking sound from the fuel pump push rod being too short, or something. So this is the one off the car. So I'm going to use my digital caliper here. I'll zero it out. I better get my glasses first thing. All right. I'm going to measure from the mounting surface to the top of the pump arm here. I do it so I can read it. 1.471 That's the new pump from Advance Auto that has not been installed yet. Oh boy, I can already see daylight between there. So I'm gonna have to move it, take up some slack. So I'm 1.433. So this one's just a little bit. The pump arm's more in than the new one I bought, so I don't know if that's enough to. I already forgot what the first number was. I'd have to go back and watch that video again. 1.433. 1.433 to 1.471. So I'll have to calculate that. That's a little bit of a difference there, and that could be the difference between a clacking sound and not, if it's got a little space in between there, you know what I mean? This pump is made by the exact same manufacturer, without a doubt. The reason I say that, there's a raised cast 4 here. This one has it as well. So this one's from Advance, this one's from O'Reilly's. Of course, the boxes they're in, they're just, you know, whatever brands they use. It's usually one manufacturer that supplies the other manufacturers. But I mean, the casting issues, this is pretty horrible looking casting. It almost is dead identical. So, but at the end of the day, this one has a longer reach than that one, so that could fix it. But I'm going to replace, I'm getting ready to leave to go to O'Reilly's and swap this out anyway, warranty it out. It's not going to cost me nothing. At the end of the day, I'm going to wind up with an extra fuel pump that I can put in the trunk in a small toolbox to carry with me, and in case the fuel pump goes out somewhere on Main Strands me, I can put this one on there. It'll clack, but it'll get me home, you know what I mean? So right now I need to package this as to not have fuel smell in the car, because it's my mom and dad's car and I'm sure they don't want it smelling like fuel. I wish I had a Ziploc gallon sized bag to put that in, but I don't. All I've got is a sandwich sized bag. So I'm going to zip tie this, then I'm going to put it inside a box and take it to O'Reilly's. I'll be back in a minute, guys. Alright guys, so I just got back from O'Reilly's. I got a new fuel pump push rod here. This is the first time I've ever bought a new one. I always reuse old ones. I do know a couple of guys from the past that has had a sound in their engine that was caused from the fuel pump push rod being worn down a little bit, causing a noise. But this is the first time I've ever had that noise happen. So while I was at O'Reilly's, they warrantied out the pump that was on here, and I did use their caliper and measured it to there, and it measured the same as this new one from Advance. So this arm does stick out further than the one I took off there, but it's just a little bit. But what I don't like is on this pump here, that's just shaking it. This one from Advance doesn't do that. So looking this over, the rod that goes in here to hold the arm in place, the hole inside the arm, I should say, the hole in it for that pin to go through, the hole is bigger than the arm. So there's a lot of side-to-side slack, but I can move this up and down, like forward and back, like this. So I don't know, man. This one not doing that, which could be the sound, you know, the slack in it, I don't know. So I'm going to go ahead and use the one from Advance. Now here's what's funny. I showed in that other video right before this one, the clip, this has a number 4 stamped on it, and the casting was real terrible on this thing. Probably, I mean, 100% same manufacturer. The one that I just got from O'Reilly's that was a warranty replacement doesn't have a number 4 stamped on it. It even has a circle indent in the side of it, and this one does not. The Advance one was identical to the one that I pulled off here. This one is definitely different. You'll see two holes here in the upper. This one does not have that. So this is a different manufacturer from O'Reilly's here, but just because of that, I'm not going to use it. That will be a spare that I will keep in the car. I'm going to use the Advance Auto one and just try it. I hope this fixes it, because I mean, these fuel pumps are 20 bucks, man, just a little over 20 bucks. So to me, that's cheap. I mean, I like to keep my stuff cheap so I can afford to repair it when it does go south, if it goes south, you know. I mean, I'm sure when I get 1,000,000 miles on the car, it's probably going to go bad. That was a joke, by the way. All right, I'm going to go through here and reassemble. So right now, actually I need to check the timing mark here. So in case you don't know, on a mechanical fuel pump on a small block Chevy, if you have your timing pointer on 0 or close to it, it is off the lobe on the camshaft for the fuel pump push rod. Fuel pump push rod. So that way the fuel pump push rod will go further up in, and it's easier to get the fuel pump on there. Right now it is not on it, and it's probably going to be harder to get the pump on. You can get it on sometimes in there, but sometimes it's pretty difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and first I'm going to make sure my 2 battery wires for my alternator is inside its rubber case, and I'm going to turn my battery switch on. I'm going to unhook the power to the HEI, which I'll forget to plug back in later and I can't get the car to start. I'm going to whirl the engine over until it gets up to top dead center. That should be close enough. I can kill the power again. Having a battery cutoff switch is pretty nice, especially when you got to do something like this. Like I got my alternator off, so I've got my, you know, these 2 posts are 12 volt constant. So if that one of them ring terminals touch something metal, we're gonna have a spark show. It's also good when you're changing out your starter, or, you know, stuff like that, battery cables, whatever. But I will say, if you're gonna do you know, a battery cutoff switch on your positive cable like I did, use a separate fused link with a fuse in it and run it directly to your radio memory wire. If you have a radio in your car that keeps a clock and keeps its, you know, presets, its stations and stuff, that way you can hook that up directly to the battery cable, and it will be constant 12 volts instead of turning your battery cutoff switch off and you lose all your memory in your radio and clock and stuff. So, or the clock in your dash or whatever, you know what I mean? You can run those on a separate little wire and a separate little inline fuse and run it directly to the, like mine's tied into one of the battery clamps on the positive battery clamp. Spray a little brake clean on a rag. I'm going to clean off this gasket surface. I don't ever silicone my fuel pump plate. They always seem to seal and stay dry for me, but what do I do with the plate? I don't know what the heck I do with my fuel pump plate. Oh. Use a little Royal Purple assembly lube here. put it on this fuel pump push rod. This stuff is pretty sticky, I guess, if you want to call it that. In other words, it doesn't just run right off like motor oil. Stuff will stay on there. I hope this fixes this, man. I really don't want to have to go to an electric fuel pump, but I will if I have to. I just don't want to. I still got quite a bit of remnants of anti-seize on these bolts, so I'm not going to put any more on it. I remember when I was a kid, I think I was about 15, and my best friend, Justin, he got like a long bed. Let's see, it was a, I don't know, it might have been a 3/4 ton Chevy full-size pickup, 4-wheel drive. And the fuel pump went out on it. And I went up there, went right about the time he was getting ready to put the pump on, and we could not get that fuel pump on there. Every time we pushed up on the fuel pump rod, the fuel pump rod would, push back down. So then we got to where we was trying to hold that pump rod and then slide the pump in real quick, and it just wouldn't work. We didn't know at the time that there was a hole at the front of the engine. You can put a longer bolt in and it'll hold that fuel pump rod in place if you need it to. But we also didn't know that to put the engine on top dead center to make sure the fuel pump rod goes further up in there and make it easier to put on. But we struggled with that, and we ended up giving up, and I think his brother ended up fixing it in like 5 minutes. So his older brother, who was a pretty good mechanic, still is a good mechanic. I shouldn't say was, he is a good mechanic. All right, you gotta tighten those down on that bottom plate. That fuel pump push rod's still stuck up in there. I'll put just a little bit of that royal purple on the end of that. I actually might put some on that. And on that pin on that rod too. Okay. Ah, crap, I forgot my fitting. I gotta put an AN fitting in here. I will give you guys a tip on these ARP bolts for the engine, whether you want to go with 12 point or regular old hex head. ARP sells an engine accessory kit. Now it used to be like 125 bucks for the set. It's probably more expensive now, but if you buy ARP bolts, separately, like a 5-pack, they usually come in 5-packs. They are pretty expensive. They're around $20-ish for a 5-pack. Well, I should say used to be. I don't know what they are now. Everything's gone up, but anyway, what I did in this case, I bought a 12-point accessory kit, and then I bought another one. I bought 2 of them. That way I ended up with all kinds of extra 12-point ARP bolts to use, because I put it in everything on this car. There's 12-point stainless steel ARP bolts on just about everything on this car. But that allowed me to use them for, you know, anywhere and everywhere. And then I bought some 5-packs here and there, but it kind of sucks when you need one particular bolt. Like my 700R4 had a metric bolt in the little bracket that holds the speedometer housing, you know, in that your cable screws onto. So I had to buy a 5-pack to get that one little bitty tiny metric bolt. So now I got 4 of them extra. And then some guy replied on my build thread at try5.com, and he told a place where you can buy them in singles. And I didn't know that at the time, but I remember for the course of like a year, year and a half, or even maybe 2 years, I had a list, a notebook page list, the front, the back, and partial of a third one, of ARP stainless bolts for this entire car, chassis and all. And what I would do when I was working at a auto accessories place, I would get my paycheck and I would use about, I don't know, 30% of that paycheck on an order from Summit for ARP bolts. So it took a long time for me to get all the ARP hardware for this car. And I'm glad I did it, because ARP hardware for me is jewelry. But all my front end sheet metal, everything on the chassis, everything is ARP bolts, which is stronger, stainless steel, and it's stronger than a grade 8 bolt. So my hands are greasy from that assembly lube. All right, I'm gonna start it up and see what's shaking, I guess. Plug in the HEI, dummy. I knew I was gonna do that. Now we'll run. Heck, man. Well, I'll say it's going to run. Still doing it. Alright, so I'm taking the pump back off. Just going to double check. So I pulled the pump out and that push rod fell all the way down to the bottom, so I'll start it back up, full start. I've been starting it and let it run without an alternator on it, so the battery's probably getting low. The battery switch is still on. Damn it, battery's about dead. Come on, man. Alright guys, so I went back and I did a video series and I went back and imported it to the computer and then, was pre-watching it to edit the footage and stuff. When I don't hear this, when I unhook the fuel pump from the engine, I don't really hear the clacking sound, but the GoPro's picking it up. So the video I posted yesterday, when I undid the fuel pump, you can hear it in the GoPro. So what I ended up doing, because I keep starting and letting it run without the alternator on it, so, it's low voltage, it's killing the battery, and it's going to end up fouling my spark plugs out probably. So I went ahead and removed the mechanical fuel pump completely and put a block-off plate down there. And I was trying to fill the vent tube up here with fuel to fill up the float bowl. And I went ahead and put the alternator back on and the belt and all that and started it back up. And it was really loud at first, and then it kind of quietened down like it did in the video from yesterday, and then it got loud again. So I've got an intermittent clacking that's loud and light with the fuel pump disconnected and the fuel pump rod out of the engine. So apparently it wasn't the fuel pump to begin with, but that's pretty awesome that the GoPro picked it up, and at least the GoPro picked it up and I didn't, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So I had a buddy text me a little bit ago and he said, I heard that in your video when you said you didn't hear it. And so I went back and watched the video and I heard it. So he's right. So I can tell you exactly what I think it is. It's right down here. It's right down here in the front of the engine. If you get your head down in there, you can hear it. It's not the valve train. I had the valve cover off of it and it running, and none of that's making noise. It is down here, and it's a metal-on-metal clack that sounds like a rocker arm if the rocker arm's super, super loose. You know how they just kind of clack, clack, clack? That's what it sounds like. But it is intermittent, light, and loud. And sometimes not at all, just for, a few seconds at least. So I let the engine run for quite a while when I did it just now, and you can hear it. So I think it's a wrist pin at this point, which means the engine's going to have to come out and come apart. That piston and rod up here is going to have to be inspected. At least I think it's this very first one right here, which is number 2. I think this is it. The engine was bored. I used my original rods, but they pressed on the new pistons. So I'm hoping they didn't damage the piston putting the piston on the rod. I mean, I don't know. I've never used this machine shop before, but I'll know more when I get it apart. But I mean, if that's what it is, I'm gonna have to turn around and buy a replacement piston and maybe even a rod. I don't know. This sucks, man. It's still holding awesome oil pressure, 50 to 60 pounds, you know, cold. So I went ahead and cleaned up the garage, put up all the tools, because I mean, if that engine's going to come out and come apart, and you know, everything's got to be visually inspected, and probably take the piston or rod to the machine shop and stuff. I don't even have a freaking vehicle right now to take it to the machine shop. So, and they're like 45 minutes away from me. So the only thing I know to do now is go ahead and pull the engine out of my pickup and stick that 305 over there in it, because I need something. This freaking sucks, man. I've built a lot of small block Chevys, and it has to be this car that 2 engines in a row have been having engine noise. That's insane to me. Like, insane. Oh well. I mean, I don't know what else to do. I'm going to wait until Friday when my buddy Jason can come over here and look at it and listen to it. But he's built probably just as many engines, if not more, than I have. So it's always best to have a second set of ears and eyes on something. And it may be something he's very familiar with. I don't know. So he's not off until Friday, and today's Wednesday evening, so my day's over anyway. So I guess tomorrow morning, because it's not supposed to rain till Saturday, I've got a couple of days anyway. I guess I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put the 4-door 55 body back in the garage beside the hardtop and pull the truck up here and drain all the fluids and get ready to yank. Well, I could probably have that engine trans out of that tomorrow, no doubt. So I guess that's a new plan. Boy, it's crazy how plans change, ain't it? In an instant. Thanks for watching.